Okie doke. We are live. Hi, everyone. It's Lisa with Are You My Cousin? It's actually Wednesday, not Thursday, but we are doing our weekly Facebook Live today for a number of reasons. As you can see, I am not alone today. I have a wonderful guest, Helen Tovey from the Family Tree UK, and we are so excited to have you, Helen. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are truly an international live stream today.
Well, thanks for asking me. It's really exciting to be here because the last time I saw you was in Roots Tech, so it's just great to catch up and have a chat about.
Yeah, because we met, I think the first time at Roots Tech just before the pandemic. And then, of course, we got to see each other again at this most recent one. And actually, last time I saw you was on the airplane, on an airplane. But so as everybody is coming in, I'll introduce Helen more fully in a few minutes, but let us know where you are watching from and viewing us from. That does a couple things. It lets me know that you can see and hear everything just fine. And plus, it's just really fun to see where people are from. I love maps. I always have since I was a child, and I like to know where people are from. So we already have Colorado in the house, who looks like they're having some bad weather out there as well. So I am in my office here in North Carolina, where we have a beautiful spring day out there. David from Georgia, wonderful. So the South is here again as well. Hey, Deb, it's good to see you again from Colorado. I really appreciate those of you who are joining us week after week. I truly appreciate your support. And so we are happy to have you here. So yes, okay. Anyway, go ahead again. If you're watching this, whether you're watching on preview or not, that is perfectly fine. Things happening at Are You My Cousin this week. New video came out this week. It's a review of Mary Eberly's DNA from DNA Hunters, her part one of her DNA Q&A we did recently, and so you can watch that on the YouTube channel. If you weren't able to watch that live, I've kind of cleaned up all the chatter there, so you'll be able to watch that a little more succinctly, I think. So if you are struggling with using Y-DNA and understanding the Y-DNA for part of your genealogy research, you definitely want to see that. Part 2 will be coming out soon as well for that. So we definitely want to check all of that out. Okie doke. So again, Helen is here from Lincolnshire. I know I'm going to say all these wrong. Lincolnshire, right?
Perfect.
Oh, okay. So this is my English pronunciation with my Southern accent. What can I say, right? And so she is the editor at Family Tree magazine there in the UK, and that is. Let me look at my note because I want to make sure I get this right. It's the longest running family history publication, correct?
The UK one, yeah, since 1984. So next year it'll be 40 years old. So that's an exciting anniversary coming up.
That is crazy. That's really that is exciting. I'm sure you guys are going to be doing a lot of a big celebration for that. That'll be wonderful. So anyway, so I wanted to have Helen come talk with us today, and then we're going to be talking about UK genealogy research and kind of getting started. And some of the history with this is I've done my own personal research, guys. I have traced my ancestor. I've traced it back to the UK. The problem is, once I left my research in the US, I really flounder a lot over when I was trying to research the British records, the Scottish records. And so I struggled a lot. I struggled understanding some of the social history behind the things, the history, as well as just what was the best way to move forward. Because as we know in genealogy research, it's not always step 1, step 2, step 3, because we have to, with history changing, records changing, boundaries changing, there's always a lot to go for. So we wanted to talk about that. So I wanted to have Helen come talk with us here. And she has been doing genealogies, well, really in some form or fashion since you were just a little girl. I think probably about what you said, 6 or 7 years old, you were already asking your grandmother about the family stories. And my hat is off to you for that. I was too busy out there trying to climb the magnolia tree in the front yard. Helen has actually, you've traced ancestry across the British Isles. So you've gone from the Orkneys to Cornwall. I know I'm not going to say this right. Roscommon to Lincolnshire. Did I get that right with my accent?
Yeah, it really is. North, south, east, and west. Like they're all over. Yeah.
Bingo. Oh, so you really are kind of across there. So she's the perfect person to talk to us about UK research. So thank you so much, Helen, for for joining us. And I really, again, like I said, appreciate you joining us, and haven't had a chance to talk with you at Roots Tech. So I hope some of you who are listening were able to visit their booth if you were there at Roots Tech this year and chat away. I got one of those buttons that said I'm related to royalty. I just have to prove it. So I'm still working on proving it for you.
You will be, Lisa. You just need to get the proof. Yeah.
I think I'm close, actually. I think I'm actually close. So anywho, so yeah, let's just jump right in, Helen, and let's talk about UK research. So for somebody who is like myself, who has, done their research and they've traced their ancestry back to the British Isles, how do you recommend starting? What's your recommendation for best practices getting started in the UK?
Sure. So if you've actually managed to find a place in the UK that your ancestors have come from, you're in a great place. You're in as good a place as everybody else. And so then you're just in the familiarization thing that you need to start learning about the record. So as with anything, it's going to depend what period you're coming back. So let's say you know the county, that the county is going to be the key thing. And there are about 40 counties across England. There are further counties in Scotland, further in Wales, further in Ireland. But it gives you a nice geographical area. And why that's important is there'll be local archives for that county, and there'll be a family history society for that county. So the archives will provide you with the records. The Family History Society will have lots of local expertise. So straight away, if you've got a county that you know your ancestors came from, you are in a great place. You just need to kind of dedicate the time to get going. But more partly, once you start looking, it's going to depend obviously on the time frame. Like if you're looking for a GI bride or something, you're going to be trying to find 20th century records, aren't you? Like the 1939 register, which is a national record, which is taken for England and Wales. It's accessible easily for England and Wales, accessible for Scotland, quite difficult with difficulty, and not really accessible for Northern Ireland. It's much harder to get. It wasn't taken, as far as I know, for Southern Ireland. So once you start looking, it's like location is going to be, just like they say for the telly program in the UK, like location. It's going to be crucial, the location, to help you know what records are available for that period. So that's what I was saying with the GI. But let's say if you had a Mayflower ancestor, you're going to be looking at a whole different bunch of records. So your date entry point of when you land back in the UK, having hopped the pond, that's going to be your defining thing, and knowing a county is going to be really, really helpful to you.
That makes sense. And I think that's the part I think many of us will struggle on this side of the ocean, is knowing that county of where they came from. But you're right. And I have found that because I made that mistake early on of not knowing. I just knew they were in England. But then when I was able to find the county, I was able to start to make a little bit of progress there. So that definitely.
Yeah. So if you are stuck on your side of the pond, because that would be a really natural place to get stuck. You found somebody who said they've come from Ireland, and you are just wondering how on earth to make that step. Like, where do you even begin? And so the best thing you can do is not try and jump back to England just yet, or Scotland or Ireland or Wales, if you don't know where you're headed, because you're going to find lots of people probably with your shared ancestor's name, and you're going to not know which one of them is yours. So the best thing you can do is orientate yourself with all of your family that you do know and the community that you do know in America. So you're going to be trying to build up the biggest family network as you can. You're going to be making notes about the occupations they have, and just reading about the wider family and wider community, and the denomination of religion that they have. And then you're going to get a feel for maybe why they came to America. And you may have other clues from, if there's wills and anything else, which can help give you clues about whereabouts this family network came from, like that kind of push-pull thing. What made them move? What made them leave the British Isles? And then that's going to help you learn, if they had a particular occupation. If lots of them were in mining, then you're going to be able to trace mining areas in the UK. So it's going to give you, the more you know about your family, the better your chances of finding the right people by the right name once you land back in the UK.
I love what you said about knowing the network, knowing that network here. And I think you're right. I've often heard from other researchers and kind of learned the hard way that oftentimes finding the records in the UK really starts with really understanding who they were here in the US first, in America first, and understanding, as you said, the wider community, because people oftentimes would settle within a community. Maybe they didn't all come at the same time, but they were coming from similar areas. If you're coming into a brand new land and a brand new country, you want some familiarity there. And so I think that's exactly where that talks to. But looking at, as you said, looking at occupations, and that can direct you to perhaps help you narrow down finding that county back in England or back in the UK, one of the UK countries. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Like but before we went live, Lisa, we were saying about how there isn't a magic bullet, and I wish there was, and we all wish was, but we can really empathise with you if you can't find your aunt. They're somewhere you know that they're in Scotland or England or Ireland or Wales, but you don't know anything more, because historically those countries are very separate in a way. So even as a British person, a UK person, we might find our ancestor maybe on the 1851 census, and it just says they were born in Ireland, and we're in the same position as you. We have no clue about where in Ireland they came from. So we can really empathise with all of you guys wondering whereabouts in Ireland, because we have the same position. And so we have to do that same thing, try and look at the network. Like if you have, it's like I have this precise situation where I have ancestors in the 1851 census for Scotland, and they were 2 brothers, 2 sisters, all living in a house. They're in their 20s. They were all born in Ireland, and there's no parents with them, and they're so they're young adults all working together, and it's 1851. So you know why they're living in Scotland, don't you? Yeah,
yes.
Because Lisa, because of the potato famine. So that, and their father had found out was a farmer. So obviously that's a really bad time to be in farming when there's a potato famine. So the kids, they've up-sticked, they've moved to a new country, but I have never managed to find where in Ireland they've come from. So I've got this kind of cliffhanger in my family history, which isn't even very far away. It's only 1851. I'm a UK person who's stuck. And so I feel your pain. So I just need to continue. So I have a matrix of people don't have. I have these 2 brothers and 2 sisters. So I have 4 names to search in the baptism records, because rather than just searching for one person by one name, the more of that matrix, the more other people you know, then you can search for those names all in the same place to see whether you can get a kind of matrix hit. Then you're more likely to be accurate, rather than just fishing any old David Foster out of the pond and hoping he's your guy. So you don't want to do that.
Right. Yes, definitely. And you're right. You sometimes finding people with for some reason, and I don't know if this is in so much of some of the other types of research, like European research that folks do, but for my UK, they tended to like those family names, and they would just name people the same name over and over and over, it seemed like. And so I would oftentimes find one of my brick wall ancestors, actually, I have now found 5 women of the same name. And so I'm at that point where, okay, I've got to build the network out for each one to see if I can start to find the connection to North Carolina out of those 5 women who were born in the right time period, entered America at the right time period, but they all have the same name of Joanna Barrett. So now I've got to figure that out. But exactly building that network of where they're at. And guys, for anybody who follows me has read much about what I do, it's all social history, guys. Everything I do pretty much these days goes back to, it's social history. It's understanding what their life was like during that period of time. And it does, whether it's in America or whether it's back in England or Scotland or Wales or any of the countries. So over there. So yeah, definitely interesting. So you mentioned you were talking about the 1851 census, but we were talking about census research, and I know that's oftentimes such a backbone for genealogy researchers. We want those census records, and why not? It's really nice to be able to track them back every 10 years or so. And there's some unique things with some of the UK records or census records I've seen, particularly that 1921 that came out. I love census records because there's so many stories that you can pull out. But as I was telling Helen before we went live, I'm jealous of the UK census records because I feel like there's even more there than what I can pull from a US census record. I know with that 1921 that came, Helen, I love the fact, that they actually filled it out themselves. I mean, that to me is so cool because they would write these interesting little notations. Did you have some interesting stories, or some interesting nuggets from some of those census records like that you might want to share with us or
I did. I had two really cool discoveries actually in the 1921. So one, my grandpa was born in 1920, and when he was a very small child, his dad, who had been a soldier in the First World War, just went AWOL, out of the family's life, and everyone thought he had died of war wounds. That was the family story. And then it transpired that actually he hadn't. He died in 1969. But anyway, on the 1921 census, he is there. So my great-grandpa is listed, and you have to say how many children under one you have, and the different. So you say how many children that you have, and he's got a cross in this box for one little child under one. So that is how my grandpa is on the 1921 census. He's just a cross, and his dad's line on the census, and the mum isn't there. So my grandpa and my great granny are somewhere else. I suspect they've gone back to Ireland. I think their marriage broke down really quickly, and she went back to stay with her mum and dad in Ireland. So hopefully I'll find them at some point when the 1926 census for Ireland comes out in a few years' time. I'll find them there. So that was one cool story, like very poignant, and it demonstrated to me how quickly, because the family rumour, once we realised that he hadn't died of war wounds, the family rumour kind of became clear that the marriage had broken down. And then the other one was my great grandpa's little sister was at home, and staying with her was a friend who was her boyfriend, which is like so outrageous for 1921, isn't it?
Oh,
and yeah. I know, yeah. And so they're staying there, and I found their parents are away on holiday at in a hotel in Derbyshire, and so she's had her boyfriend around to stay for the time of the census, which I can't believe it. And they recorded this on the census. And then a couple of years later, they got married, and I knew them as old people when I was a little kid. They were still alive, and they were always really a really fun couple. They're called Alan and Mickey, and yeah, so it's just funny to see them being naughty young, like 20-something-year-olds with just like modern kids, or I don't know. Yeah.
Don't you wish that they were still alive when the census came out, so you could go, wait a minute, guys, we need to talk?
Yeah.
But you bring up a good point, and that's a big difference between some of the U.S. census, like the 1920 U.S. census versus the 1921 census for England and Wales, and that is that the census in England and Wales was taken for us on a specific night. That was and it included everybody. Yeah. It included tourists, it included visitors, it included somebody, staying in somebody else's house, basically. And your other relative, the parents being on holiday. It would, and it even did, if I remember correctly, the hotels that they would have
everything. So our census, it is literally like, that kids game, musical chairs, and you say stop, and so everybody just has to completely stop. So census night happens once every 10 years. For family historians in England, Wales and Scotland, it's from 1841 to 1921. So you have like a nice 80-year period. For Ireland, lots of theirs are destroyed. So you just have two census years for Ireland, 1901 and 1911. But for all of the countries, this is the same. On census night, you will literally record everybody who is in that household for that night. So if your child's friend was having a sleepover, they're recorded there, in theory, on census night. Occasionally you get people recorded in two homes. I think it's maybe people being cautious. And occasionally they don't get recorded because people think, I'll record them at their main home, and they don't get recorded. And what is really special about our census is that literally everybody gets recorded. So you can find Queen Victoria and her family on our census, and you go down the page and go through her household, and her maids are listed on the same census. You have prison records. All the prisoners are recorded. Quite often for prisons and asylums, they may use initials, even for people's privacy. Just in the original records, there are the initials. So you have to kind of have a bit of a gamble. Was this definitely my kind of HT for Helen Tovey or whatever, but they are all recorded just the same. So it's people from all walks of life recorded household by household, and you get such interesting insights to them, because you may have a wealthy family, or you may have found their home on the census. But when you look carefully, you think actually there are five families living in this house. So suddenly it's not a big wealthy house they're living in. It's many people living in lots of apartments, and it's, you know, get a very different social context. Yeah. So our censuses are fun because they're so, it's like everybody is included. Because I found that interesting with the US ones, like especially the early ones, they're recording just the head of the household, aren't they?
Just the head of the household from like 1840 back, from 1790 to 1840. It's just the head of the household. It tends to have been taken over a range of time. So whereas I love the analogy of the game stop. Everybody stop and take. It typically went over several months. It would have been, the questions were directed, who was living in the house, and the ages as of, a specific date. Oftentimes it was June 1st, maybe it was in April sometimes, but that was, to be honest, I don't know how accurate that was on the census record. So it can be more of a timing issue with that. I love, and that you guys have that one night, but also in the US, we didn't have, it just was the household. So it wasn't, who was living here that day, and if you had tourists or visitors, they would not have been documented. They would, people in the hotel. I love the fact, as I've done some research for some clients, and I'm finding, their family members actually traveled and did business with family back in the UK. And it was really fascinating. I could watch them because they could be captured in 1920 in the US, but then I could also capture them in 1921 in the household of the family member, and they had a business together, and they were, one lived in England and one lived here in the US. And so it was a really nice way of getting that continuity of the storyline for that family, and finding out exactly where they were. So I love that, being able to do that, and just gives you that story of really what was happening that night. I can just imagine it's like that night, everybody just stop. Okay, who's spending the night where, and who's, I just think it's a wonderful, it's just such a unique way to do it. And then with each individual filling it out, or I should say individual for the family, the household. So they were actually mailed the,
they would be delivered round by the enumerator. So he would go round, hand out the census forms, and then he would return and collect them all once everyone had time to fill them in. So for most of our censuses, what would happen is he would then take people's completed forms back to his house. And I love this image, when you can't find somebody in the census and you feel really frustrated and you think, why can't I find them? So then I kind of imagine, so you're the census enumerator, you've collected all the census forms from all these houses, and you have a big pile of them on the table next to you. You've got your many Victorian children in your little tiny house. You haven't got electric light. And you just know, once you start visualizing that scene, why some people didn't get, why some people got missed off the census, because he'll be busy copying them over into his enumerator summary books. And of course, he's going to forget the odd line here or there, isn't he? Because his many children will probably be disrupting him. So for most of the years, then for England and Wales, so 1841 to 1901, you just have the enumerator's copy. You have his copy version, and the original forms got chucked away. 1911 and 1921 for England and Wales, you have your original householder form with the person who filled in the form have their signature. And then for Scotland, for 1911, you have the enumerator summary book, so you don't have the original form. And 1921, my brain has gone completely blank, and I can't remember whether you have the, I just can't remember which one you have. But so there's a lot of variety across.
Yeah. Now, someone was brought up in the chat over on the YouTube, said, of course, the U.S. Census was for calculating representatives for the districts, so it does work different than, say, the English Census when it comes to your governing body. So ours was, or some of those early ones, they really were just trying to get who would have counted towards the representation number for the early government that was set up. So yeah, definitely an interesting way to look at that too. So, but that's, I'm with you. I can see that poor little census record guy and the kids running around, but the same thing, I could see it too here in the US. You can see them if so-and-so's not home, I'm just going to ask the neighbor, okay, who lives in that house and how many children and when were they born? And that accounts for a lot of the discrepancies in ages.
Good point.
And dates. We don't know who actually gave that information. I think the 1940 census, they do indicate who provided the information, but yeah, who knows? It could have been the 5-year-old kid. I don't know. Mom's really old, kind of thing. So I can just see that. But yeah, so I do enjoy pulling those stories out. Let's talk a little bit too about one thing I think that can be a little different is finding some of the vital records in UK. And I know that's going to vary based on location as well as certainly time periods. Do you have any good tips of how to get started when it comes to looking for those birth, marriage, death records there?
Yeah, definitely. So the main website to go to, if you're looking for the civil, so the state birth, marriage and death, would be freebmd.org.uk. And I can send Lisa these links if you want, but I'm sure you know anyway, Lisa. And why that's good, that's an index of all the birth, marriage and deaths for England and Wales. So you can search, obviously, for your ancestors' birth, marriage and deaths. And it's from 1837 onwards for England and Wales, and it goes up to fairly recent times, to the late 20th century. Then for Scotland, their civil registration started at a different date. So that's 1854. And for Ireland, it's 1864. And there were a few earlier non-Roman Catholic marriages from 1845. So there's lots of variation. So I think this goes back to the no magic bullet thing. The more you can find out about your ancestors' area, you're not going to get an overview of which records are available. You want to know which records are available for England or for Scotland. And the more you kind of can inform yourself, then the more likely you're going to be searching where there are records, not thinking there are records and there aren't. So FreeBMD is really good. And it does have index details. The other place to look for is the General Register Office site. Now, that doesn't have marriages, but it does have indexes for births and deaths, again, for England and Wales. And then sorry about my phone. And then Scotland, you need to go on Scotland's people, and then Ireland, I think it's Irish certificates. Let me find out that. I use it a lot, and the Irish one is really good because although it starts slightly later, which is a bit of a downer, it starts from 1864, the good thing is that that's completely free and you get to see the register entries. And the register entries is the boring way of kind of saying the certificates. And why you want to see those original certificates is why we all know they have the full story. You're not going to be making an assumption that you've got the right Lisa Leeson. You're going to know because you're going to have Lisa's parents there, for instance, on her birth records. You know you have the right one. So it's FreeBMD, Scotland's people, and I'll get you that. I think it's Irish certificates. If you Google it, it'll come up right on the top. But we can make sure we get the links out to everybody at the end.
I will, and I will have those in the description and in the comments, guys. So particularly for those who watch on the replay, I'll have all that. You won't have to go searching; those will already be there. For those of you who are watching live, check back in just a little while. I'll have those up.
There is one other thing which ties in really well. So when you go back before those vital civil registers, so the state registers, then you're looking at parish registers. So, but the thing about parish registers is they continue to the present day. Obviously, they get increasingly less used as we become a more and more secular society, so there are fewer and fewer people actually baptizing their children. And by 1851, there are many people who don't want to baptize their church, like baptize their children in the Church of England, up to about half of the population, in some places. So that's a really good point to know, that you may not find your ancestors' births, baptisms in the parish registers once the state registers come in, because then they'll be able to just record. If you're looking in church records, you're going to have to find their precise denomination. But the good thing about the parish registers is that let's say you look in FreeBMD, you find the index details, and then more and more parish registers are being digitized. So you could go on your data site, maybe it's Ancestry, Find My Past, see if they've got the parish registers for your county. And then if they do have those parish registers, you can look them up, and then you will find the fuller details to be able to kind of verify with more certainty, have you got the right person, without having to pay for our certificates, because FreeBMD is the index. it has free index information, but you'll need to order a certificate, which costs about £10, which is about probably $12. So you don't really want to do that if you don't have to. So if you can do a workaround using the parish registers, then that can save you money if you already got a data subscription. So it's definitely worth a try. Yeah.
Definitely. Oh, thanks for that. I appreciate that tip. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that as society becomes more secular, that fewer and fewer people are doing the baptizing their children into the church. Even back, like you said, in the 1850s, you were starting to see that decline. And that's an important piece of the puzzle to think about as part of the society that we have to understand, with the ancestors too. So that's a good, I made a special note of that.
Yeah, like so back in the mid 1800s, obviously it would be a much more religious worshipping society that would do nowadays. So people were worshipping, but they were worshipping outside that established church, outside the parish church. They were worshipping in their own chapels, maybe as Methodists, Baptists, and the other denominations, rather than the main kind of official Church of England. Yeah.
Perfect. So we have actually a question in the from the YouTube channel, and Joyce was asking where to find records for a policeman, that her granddad was a bobby in London.
Okay. So I don't know about policemen in particular, Joyce, but I would recommend that you go to the London Metropolitan Archives. And again, Lisa, I'm really bad at remembering URLs off the top of my head, but we get that URL over to you afterwards, Joyce. And so that would be a good place to start. What else would be good? I think that would be my first port of call. Yeah, I'm really sorry that's not more precise than that, but that would be definitely the first port of call. And as a general point, because we all have so many different varieties of questions that we need to try and answer. So if you have got a topic, whether it's how do I research in the 1600s, or how do I research in the 1900s, how do I research apprentices, how do I research military ancestors, then the place which everybody, even professional genealogists, use this resource, and beginners, it's suitable for everybody, but it's very, very detailed. So that's why professionals continue to refer to it. And you go onto the UK National Archives website, and they have research guides, which I'm sure you've come across, Lisa. And the research guides are invaluable. They're so detailed. They give an overview of the topic, and then they have links through to the collections that are held in the archives. And I think they tend to, each of the guides depends, it will vary depending on the topic, but maybe you can link through to the records and find out about them at the National Archives. Some of the National Archives records have obviously been digitized out by the commercial sites, like licensed out to them, like the census, for instance. And then others of the records, the UK National Archives has digitized, and you can pay not very much, like £3.50, I think it is, which is about probably $4, and you can download a wealth of records about your ancestor for that. So the UK National Archives, then that would be the place to go and look for the research guides, and that's a really good place to start off on your learning journey. Plus, potentially, and you'll be able to trace records and potentially access them online. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you'd have to employ a researcher or go and visit the UK National Archives. And the other really cool thing, well, there's a few different cool things, but another really cool thing about the National Archives website, they have a section called Find an Archive. So in there, then you can go and find the archive you need for your area. So I say, well, if you know the county that your ancestor came from, you'll be able to track down the kind of the archives for your locality in England, much more precise than just the National Archives. So the National Archives will have major collections like military records up until the 1920s, the census records, the 1939 registers. So it has major national things like that. But then in the county record offices, then you'll get maybe like school records. You're going to get more local collections to look at.
That sounds good. Yes, I've definitely used those guides, those research guides at the National Archives there in the UK, and they are excellent. They because again, when you don't know what you're looking for, you got to start somewhere. And that really learn how to research first, and then you can start your research.
Yeah. And another resource which is brilliant for anywhere, wherever you are in the world, is the Family Search Wiki. So going on there and looking at your English county, because you can drill down to even get your parish. So that would obviously get you more specific information once you found the parish. Yeah,
I definitely use the Family Search Wiki, especially when if I know that location and I'm trying to find that what exists, for that particular location. That's definitely the first step I go once I've got that. So yeah. We got one question here in the YouTube, and then I'm gonna let you tell us a little bit about the Family Tree membership. But so Phil wanted to know, he said his grandfather served in the English Army during the Great War, but he can't find his records, and he heard that they were destroyed during the Second World War. Is that true?
It's terrible, isn't it, Phil? It's just so awful. So again, we feel your pain. So what happened was, they collected detailed records of the many millions of men, and they don't have even a precise number. People will say varied numbers between 5 million and 7 million, which I'm like, how can you not know more precisely than that, who served in the British and Commonwealth armed forces in the First World War. They collected these records. Obviously, there were many, many men who were injured, so they had the pension records as well. But the service records were kept in a street called Arnhem Street. The Second World War was raging. There was the Blitz, and as far as I know, I think a bomb landed, but it was a fire which subsequently happened after the bomb had landed, which took out an estimated 60 or 70% of these records. So literally millions of soldiers' records got burnt with just no other trace for them. So you have maybe like a 30, maybe slightly more % chance that you're going to find your ancestors' First World War service record. That's for the army soldiers. If your ancestor was an army officer, then their records will have survived, and there are you can use the long papers, and you can go in the Gazette. But there are other things you can do for soldiers, though. So on Ancestry, you've probably already done it, but if you find the medal index cards and the medal rolls, because that's where you're going to find out information about your ancestors. So for your First World War ancestor, Phil, the medal index cards is a great resource. It's a good and bad resource. So it's a great resource because if you don't know much about your First World War ancestor, it's a comprehensive one. So it includes the soldiers and the officers. So it's a really good broad brush record. The drawback is, because there's so many millions of men serving, or people serving, you are very likely to find several people with the same name as your ancestor. So then your challenge is working out which of these medal index cards relates to your ancestor. And if you don't know which regiment he served in, then you're going to find it tough to identify. Now, if you have a photo of him in uniform, then we can actually help you at Family Tree Magazine. If you send in the photo, we can help identify the uniform. We can help identify the regiment he was in, his rank, any special badges of special skills badges he may have. There are all sorts of clues hidden away on military photos. So if you have a military photo, there's a very good chance you can unpick that, find his medal index card. Where you want his medal index card is, it'll say the theatre of war where he first served, which is really important, because maybe he was one of those ones who went out with the British Expeditionary Force right in those early months of 1914, or maybe he joined up later, maybe because of his age, or maybe he was conscripted from 1916 onwards. So and it will identify which of those medals he was awarded, and so you get a good clue like that. And also on his medal index card, it'll have his regiment, so then you'll be able to go and find unit war diaries to find out what they were doing at the time. So to try and piece when he first entered the war, then you can kind of try and follow his journey and see what the actual regiment was doing, where it was serving.
Oh, that's
so great. There's a little bit of a workaround, but it's a yes, you haven't heard wrong, Phil. They are largely
Yeah, but well, good. It's good to know that there are some possible ways to do that. So perfect.
And it's on Ancestry as well, so that's even better, isn't it? It's just you can go for it. Yeah,
definitely. All right. So Helen, do you want to share with us? We've talked a lot about learning how to research in the UK and some of the getting started. Do you want to share about what Family Tree has, your Plus membership that you have that helps? There's so much educational so many educational resources there, and I'll pop a link into the chat too as well, so people can learn more about it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to, and I will actually. There's a few other things which I'm going to say about education, because they're just such good resources. So one is, I mentioned about the UK National Archives. There's also the National Library of Wales, and there's Scotland's People, and the National Library of Scotland, and the National Archives of Ireland. So these are all amazing national archives, and they all have good research guides and information on them. So I'd recommend visiting your chosen country and reading up about them. There's two other organizations which offer fantastic education, and they do quite kind of short run courses. So maybe like some of them are 3 weeks or 6 weeks. They're quite affordable. So one is pharostutors.com, and they do courses which retail maybe like 40, 50, 70 pounds. So only just a little, slightly bit more dollars. So let's say $50 to $90, that sort of thing. They're taught by really, really reliable, well-qualified tutors. And the other is the Society of Genealogists, which you can join as an associate member. So I'm based in the countryside. I don't get to London very often. So even though I live in the UK, I can just join as a remote member, and then you can get online and see the resources they have online. But more important, I think, join in with their talks program, which you can get slightly less money. So that's picking out those other people, but they are really, really useful, and education is going to be key to helping you hop the pond. Then the other thing we do, so I'm editor of Family Tree magazine. We've been doing our magazine, which next year will have its 40th birthday. But we also we have an online membership called Family Tree Plus. And we started this because through COVID, then many of our readers were contacting us, and we realized we actually had a really nice community of people who like learning online. So with a Family Tree Plus membership, then you pay £99 for the year, but we've got a special offer for Lisa where you can sign up to be a member for £50 for the year. That's about $60. And for that, you get the latest issue of Family Tree magazine to read as a digital issue every month. You can join our DNA club, which has a monthly meeting. Likewise, our genealogy gadgets club and our study club. And these are live online meetings. They're tutored by expert presenters, and there's time for questions afterwards. But so I think we can pop the link in. Which you have. Thanks.
Yes,
so Lisa's
popped
the link in. So that's the link for the offer. But if you just want to kind of dip your toe in and see, is this for me? Then I would recommend go to so our URL, which is www.family-tree.co.uk/membership. And you can take out a 7-day free trial. And then there are a few really good things to look at when you go in there. So one, look at our latest issue of the magazine, just because you can have fun and see, is this useful for me? And our magazine is really, really aimed at helping people trace their British ancestors. And the other, if you do this workbook, so I'm going to hold it away. And this workbook is aimed at people who are new to their family history. And it's aimed at people who are searching ancestors in England, Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. And the digital copy of this is in our Family Tree Plus, and we give it a digital copy to all of our Family Tree Plus members. So if you go on a free trial, you'll be able to browse through here and get lots of useful information demonstrating to you those key records that Lisa's been talking about, like the birth, marriage and death, the census. So it's a really good orientation publication to help you get going with your UK research. So yes, but you're very welcome to actually join as members as well. So go for it. I'm not trying to so it's a good saving. Yeah, it's about half price.
Yeah, and I put the link in there, so the membership link where they can just to get the free trial thing to try it out, guys. I had so much fun poking around, and I learned so much. The lectures were fabulous too. Just to be able to get in there and learn it from that perspective of the UK, which was not a knowledge base I had, quite frankly. So yeah, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, Helen, for coming. I really appreciate that. I will on the back end of once everything's said and done, I'll get the links into the comments and descriptions for you guys, so you can have that for reference. And thank you so much for coming. And Helen, thank you again so much for joining us.
Thanks for asking me. It's really fun. Thank you. Yeah.
Information. All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.